Hi, everyone. Welcome to Home Buying 101, the No Fluff Playbook. The purpose of this course is really to dive into a strategic look at purchasing in the Austin metro area and what that looks like today. So, I'm going to walk you through a couple of things. First off, I'll introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Krystal Overton. I am a realtor here in the Austin metro area. I am a Austin native, and my goal in all of this is to make buying and selling simple. Whatever real estate move it is that you are hoping to do or wanting to do, my goal is to make that simple. So, with that comes understanding the local market and being a full-time agent being available for you so that you can truly take that next step in your real estate purchase or transaction with confidence. So we're going to go through a couple of things. This is not your typical home buying class that's going to go through step by step of this is how you purchase a home, you do this step, and what comes next after you write a contract, because all of those things are typically covered in your consultation. And by talking about that now without really having a whole complete mindset that you are able and willing to and ready to purchase a home, sometimes that kind of goes in one ear and out the other. We cover all that in your consultation as well as throughout the process. So, my goal today is really to kind of get you in that mindset of what purchasing looks like and help you to understand how you can do that and how I can help you get there confidently. So, what you're going to walk away with today, and what my focus is today, is how to boost your buying power. And you'll hear that more in the purchasing realm when you are thinking about buying a home. You'll hear what's your buying power? Do you know your buying power? So you're going to hear that phrase quite often, and we'll talk about what that means and kind of how you identify what your buying power is. We'll talk about upfront cost and what to expect beyond just a down payment. A lot of times people think it's just a down payment that you have to have, and there's some misconceptions about a down payment to purchase a home. So I'll kind of identify what those costs are so that you have and keep that in mind. How to spot leverage points in today's market. Believe it or not, buyers actually have leverage in purchasing a home today. So, despite all of the craziness that's happened over the last couple of years, and honestly, the unknown in the future years, you right now as a buyer have leverage. And I'll talk about how you can utilize that leverage in order to successfully purchase. Buyer mistakes, making sure that you avoid those mistakes. Some of those are personal mistakes that I made when I purchased my first home. So I'll, of course, direct you and talk to you about what those mistakes were and how to make sure to avoid those, but also some mistakes that I see in the market every day from buyers. And then just kind of what is that clear plan moving forward to go from I'm curious if I can buy a home, I really want to buy a home, to I'm confident, I'm ready to start this, and I'm going to take that leap into whatever it is that I need to do next to position myself in order to buy. Sticking around to the end, I've got a bonus gift for you. So I'll go over that at the end. So hang in there with me. Hopefully, this hour is jammed with lots of information to help you, again, be a confident buyer when you walk away from this presentation today. Um, so, yeah, hang in there with me. I'm excited that you're here. What I'd like to start with is why buying feels so impossible right now. And this comes from buyers that I'm currently working with, buyers that I have worked with, and just conversations that I've had with people about buying. Right now, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of uncertainty in some areas of our economy. And honestly, that's something that is outside of our control. But a lot of times, what I'm hearing is that buyers feel that home prices are at the all historic highs, or you're hearing that in the news, and that automatically is to them internally saying, well, I can't buy right now because I can't afford that. So I'm going to break that myth down for you. Interest rates, right? We've seen kind of the volatile shift in interest rates. Right now, they're kind of leveling out to what we call a normalized market, believe it or not. Where we are right now is actually more along the lines of normal than it has been in the previous years. We got used to those low interest rates. It seemed easy. It seemed like everybody could buy a house with those interest rates, but that came with some consequences. So we'll talk about that also. And then inventory, depending on where you live or where you'd like to purchase, inventory of homes or homes that are available on the market to purchase. Some have an abundance of inventory, some don't. Real estate is super hyper local, so it really depends on your zip code. It depends on your neighborhood. It depends on your city. All of those things factor into availability of homes on the market. In some areas, that is tight still, and in others, there's a lot more on the market for you to choose from. A lot of times in the headlines, what we hear now is or it feels like it's safer to wait. But I'm going to knock all of those myths down and I'm going to really show you what it looks like to purchase here in the Austin metro area. What waiting for rates to drop really look like. And what this is about is think back to COVID, right? Real estate during the COVID time, 2020, 2021, even really to the tail end of 2022, real estate was crazy. The market was crazy. Things were happening at astronomical speeds. There were things happening in transactions that never occurred before, simply because that was the time that we were in. So when we say now, I want to wait for the rate to drop. Well, number one, that's likely probably never going to happen again for those rates to get to those lows, which was in the twos and the threes. They were great if you got in then, but we'll talk about how that kind of levels out in the long run. But waiting for rates to drop, they have dropped, right? So what does that really mean? A quarter of a percent, a whole percent, 2%. Right now, rates are hovering around 6%. Again, that's the national average. It really just depends on what type of loan product you're approved for, credit scores, all of those things. So a rate for one person is very different for another. But when rates were really low during that COVID time, homes were sold in less than 24 hours. Think about that. That means there were people that were either purchasing homes without seeing them, sight unseen, which is absolutely insane. I can't imagine buying a home with never walking through it, never getting a feel for the space, never having, due diligence done to make sure that that home is a good purchase. But people were doing that because that's what they had to do in order to win that deal or that home. Buyers were waiving inspections and appraisals. And there's the inspections and appraisals are two different things. When you first decide you want to purchase a home, there is a period in Texas called the due diligence period or the option period where you essentially are purchasing for a period of time for you to be able to do inspections. Inspections are going to tell you about the condition of the home, right? Is the roof good? Is there no holes that you can't see? Are the systems working properly? The mechanical systems, the AC, the plumbing, is that good? There's no leaks internally, things like that, right? That's what you're getting when you do an inspection. Is the foundation good? Should I have a structural engineer in because the foundation's all wonky? What if the home has a pool? You definitely want a separate pool inspection, a septic tank. You want a septic inspection. Maybe it's an older home and you want to see if there's any termite damage or things like that, right? People were waiving that right to have those inspections. So they were saying, you know what, I really love this home. Haven't seen it, but I really love it. Don't worry, I don't need to do any inspections. I trust that everything is good, looks great. I'm going to take my chances. People were also waiving appraisals, and appraisals, on the other hand, are ordered by the lender. The lender is going to have an appraiser done or an appraisal done, excuse me, where there is someone that's going to go out to the home and they're going to assess not only the condition, but the value of the home. And this is really important because if the appraiser says the value of the home is less than what you are actually putting in to purchase the home. So for number's sake, we'll say you want to buy a home that's $400,000. The appraiser goes out and says, I think that home is really worth 310. Well, you've got $90,000 of monies that the lender is not going to give you. They're not going to give you more to purchase a home than what the home's actually worth. So appraisals are super important. And people were waiving those also. They said, you know what? We'll make up the difference, doesn't matter. So that's crazy, right? You really never want to do that. Buyers were paying 20 to 100,000 over what the asking price of the home was just to win. Sellers were flipping through all of their offers that they had and they were looking at numbers, right? And instead of saying all of this looks great, looking at all the different terms in the contract, they were looking at the highest price offer and they were saying, you know what? They're going to offer 50,000 more than what I'm actually asking. We'll take that one. Okay. And again, that doesn't mean that's what the home is worth. That just means that's what someone paid for it. Competition was brutal. You know, they had new construction had wait list for people to even possibly get a home, and they were having to put money on lots and bids. And I mean, it was so crazy. As a buyer, you had no room to ask for any kind of assistance, any kind of leverage to help you get into that home. They would just take your offer and go, nope, not that one. So today, it's not as crazy as it was, but it still is a market where you have to really be informed. You have to go into that purchase and that attempt to purchase confidently so that you can again be successful. So we'll talk through some of those things to help you get there and make sure that you are successful. Some things that my buyers today are negotiating and kind of what we're seeing in real estate is that sellers, and when I say sellers, I'm also including builders in that. So we can lump them together for right now. But sellers are paying closing cost. Now, most people hear about down payments, but they don't think about closing costs. Those are some additional costs that are included in the purchase. But a lot of sellers and builders are saying, we will help you pay those costs to make sure that you can get into the home. Now, builders are able to do a lot more with that than sellers, but there's an opportunity for you. And when we talk about negotiating, that is one thing that really works in your favor if that seller or that builder is able to do that. That's less money that you have to come out of pocket when you purchase that home. 2-1 rate buy downs to lower your payments from anywhere between 1 to 3 years. Essentially, what that means is that within a when you purchase or when you get a mortgage to purchase a home, of course, you're assessed an interest rate. So let's just use 6% for easy numbers. If you want to buy that rate down, we know that the higher the interest rate, the more your payment's going to be, right? So we want to buy that interest rate down. It costs money to do that, but every 1% is worth an amount of money. So again, for easy numbers, I'll use $1,000. That number can vary just a little bit. They're called discount points. But let's say the rate currently is 6%. You want to buy the rate down for the first 2 years. You want to buy it down, and that's going to cost you an amount of money. That is going to have your mortgage payment at, let's say, again, for easy numbers, let's say $4,000, or excuse me, let's say your mortgage at 6%, buying it down for the 2%, for the first 2 years, that's going to be maybe $2,500. That number is probably a little bit high, but you're going to have to pay $2,500 in order to buy that rate down for 2 years. Then you're going to buy it down for another year, which is again an additional cost for that extra point. So for that first 3 years of you living in your home, your payment is a lot lower. After that 3 year period, your payment then goes back to what it would be at that 6% that you were actually approved for. Okay. So 2-1 buy downs, there's also what we call 3-2-1 buy downs. They're not as popular as they were initially when rates were a lot higher, but we're still kind of seeing them out there. Right now, builders are essentially paying that money up front to buy down the rate for you. So that's where you see advertised 3.99% interest rate fixed. That means for 30 years, your interest rate is 3.99%. Now that costs money to do that. And guess what they're going to do with that money? They're going to roll it into the price of the home. So, yes, they're paying for it for you up front, but you're essentially paying for it on the back end, if that makes sense. But it helps you get into your home. If they're paying closing costs and buying down your rate, that's a win-win because your payment's going to be a lot lower. Okay. So there's lots of variations with rate buy downs, which what a lender can help you with, depending on your situation. Sometimes a 2-1 buy down is not feasible or it's not ideal. So that's not always a great thing. Repairs or upgrades after inspection, that just means that sellers are more willing to pay for some of those repairs, especially if they are for safety reasons, or they're willing to pay for, something to be fixed prior to closing, whatever comes up on that inspection report. Now, that doesn't mean you give that inspection report to the seller and say, I need you to fix all those things. Because essentially that means then you're getting a brand new house when this home was built in, 2015, right? So the goal for inspections are really to identify safety hazards. If the fuse box is about to blow, I want to make sure that there's an electrician that is making sure that that is fixed prior to me buying the home. I don't want to buy the home and then a week later the fuse box blows. But that's essentially what sellers are more willing to do. Flexible closing timelines. That just means, again, buyers and sellers are able to work through some of those moving timelines. Maybe the seller needs to sell fast. They have to relocate and they have to be in another location at a certain period of time. So they need a 30-day close, which is typical standard. Sometimes sellers are buying a brand new house and it's being built and they need a little bit more time. So maybe that time is pressed to 45 days. Or on the buyer side, maybe the same thing, right? So sellers and buyers are more apt to work together to actually identify a good moving timeline for them. And then price reductions, when homes sit on the market longer, sellers are more willing to come down on their price. Now, that depends on the type of seller that you're dealing with. If you're dealing with a seller that is just putting their home on the market, throwing a number out of the air, between them and their realtor, and they say, "Hey, let's just see what happens," right? Let's see what sticks. They're probably not going to come down on their price. They're just going to see, does it sell? Does it sell? Nope. Okay, well, we'll take it off. Right? That's one type of seller. Then you have some sellers that are like, I need to sell. I'm moving. I'm being relocated. There's other family situations where they need to sell. And so their price is a little bit more online where it should be. But if it needs to have a price reduction, it will. And that works to your favor. So depending on how long the home has been sitting on the market, there can always be negotiations for price. So what waiting could cost you? This is just a graphic to I kind of identify what I mentioned earlier, how giving a real example of, say, your home is $400,000. If you think about appreciation of real estate, remember, real estate appreciates, whereas your car that you buy, that depreciates. The minute you drive off the lot in your car, you've already depreciated the value. Whereas your home, the more you're in it, the longer you're in it, you start to increase the appreciation, which is what we call equity. So if you think about a $400,000 home that is appreciating at 4% a year, in just 1 year, that home is worth $16,000 more than what it was worth when you bought it. That's a lot of money in 1 year, right? So if you add in the lost equity pay down, that's 16 more thousand dollars. So if you decide to keep renting and you now have lost out on that initial 16,000 and the $16,000 in order to make that move happen, that is $32,000. So then if you just look at the graph here, exponentially, everything is going to increase. So over the next 2 years, you can look at how much a $400,000 house is going to be worth over the next 2 years if you just apply this principle of 4% appreciation a year. So that same house in 2027 that was worth 410 in this graphic here is worth more about what 435, closer to 440. So that's appreciating again over time. That money that it appreciates is equity. That's equity that you can leverage to take out to do home repairs. You can take it out to pay down debt. You can take it out to buy a car. You can do all of those things, travel, right? That equity is yours essentially. So that home appreciation and building your equity is super, super important. And I can use my house for an example. In 2019, we purchased our home for 265, I believe was the final sales price. That was in 2019, right? We're here in the Georgetown area. Here it is 2025. Our home, if I look at all of our neighborhood comps and kind of price our home, if we were to put it on the market today, we could probably get around 410, 415 for our home. So think about the difference there. That is money that we have gained in equity just from being here for 6 years. Okay, so think about that, right? The real risk is staying on the sidelines. And again, all this ties into your mindset, getting you in the mindset that now is the time to purchase. If you were to ask me right now, when is the best time to buy? My answer is going to be today. Why is it today? Because we don't know what's going to happen in the future, and we can't go back to the past and purchase previously, right? So the best time to buy is today. And another way of thinking about that is the best time to buy is when you are ready, when you are financially ready to make sure that you can sustain a mortgage at that time. Now, that's not saying, will I still be able to afford it in 20 years? Who knows? But right now, if you have the credit, you have the finances, you have the right lender, you have the right agent, all those things come together in a nice, pretty package, and you are approved for a mortgage, now is the time to buy. Okay. So these things that are here are things that I've previously talked about and what waiting could mean versus what actually acting can unlock for you. And when I get to this later on in the presentation about kind of those first steps, that first step is critical. I know it's the most scariest step for people, but that first step is really critical so that we can see what we can unlock. Are you even able right now to purchase? You may want to purchase. Everything in you wants to purchase a home, but are you able to? So we'll talk about how we get there. So, what should you be doing right now? If you say to yourself, I want to purchase, I want to be a homeowner, or if you haven't purchased a home in 3 years or more, you are considered again a first-time home buyer. And you can take advantage of all these wonderful opportunities for first-time home buyers and monies that they are giving, grants and things of that nature, to help assist in that purchase. So the first thing you should be doing right now is really getting clear on your numbers. What is your buying power? What are you able to afford? What should you be looking at? Because what I find is when people come to me and they talk about wanting to purchase, they've already been on Zillow, scrolling, 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 right? You're scrolling Zillow with an idea in mind, and be careful with those online sites because when they quote you a monthly payment, they're only quoting you part of that monthly payment. Your payment's actually broken down into four parts: principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Those online calculators, unless it's like through a lender or a title company where they factor in all four parts of that payment, those things on most of those sites are only quoting you on principal and interest. That's the lowest part of your payment is principals and principal and interest. So they may say a $450,000 home, your mortgage payment could be 1,300, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I can do that. I'm paying more than 1,300 right now." Right? But you're forgetting about the other two, or it's not showing you those other two parts of your payment, which is, and actually I say three, which is taxes. Taxes are super high depending on where you want to live. If you want to live in Pflugerville, Georgetown, Round Rock, well, some parts of Georgetown, Pflugerville, Round Rock, Austin, those taxes are a lot higher than some of your further areas like Jarrell, Manor, some parts of Georgetown, and things of that nature. So taxes are high, right? Then you have insurance. Insurance, y'all, goes up every single year, homeowners insurance. And it goes up because there's natural disasters that have been happening. Think about the floods that we've had, the hail, the all of those things are factored into your homeowner's insurance policy, and that goes up every year. And if you're in a flood zone and you're required to have flood insurance, that's pricey. So you have those four things now in your payment. So what that $1,300 payment is telling you really would be more like 2,800. And if you factor in your interest rate, and if you're in a homeowners association, that's another payment or something that you're going to have to pay. If you're in a MUD, a municipal utility district, a PID, a lot of the newer developments are in these districts where you have extra taxes that you have to pay. So your $1,300 a month on Zillow means nothing, right? So really getting clear on your buying power and what that number actually should be for the price of the home, that's where you need to be. Knowing and understanding upfront costs so that there are no surprises. I talked a little bit about inspections. Inspections are done before you get to closing. So if you're buying a home, you can expect to have an inspection done, which is about $500 to $700, just depending on the size of the home. A standard one-story home inspection probably going to run you about 450, right? 400 to 450. 3,500 square foot home, 2 story is probably going to run you more like 700, right? So that's an upfront cost. Your earnest money that you have to pay to the title company as soon as you write the contract, or at least within 3 days of writing the contract, that's an upfront cost. Option period. In order for you to do that inspection, you have to pay for that option period. That's usually about 1% of your earnest money. So just to give you some numbers, your option cost may be on a $400,000 home may be about $400. Your earnest money would be 4,000, your option would be 400. Then you have a $500 inspection. So those costs right there, you have to be prepared to pay in the forefront of purchasing a home. When you get to closing, that's when you pay down payment and closing cost. So a lot of times people lump all that together and they are in separate fees that are paid at different times of the transaction, but you want to know what you're coming out of pocket with first. Be ready to move fast when the right home hits the market. So as your agent, I would be watching the market based on what your buying power is, areas that you're looking for, trying to find you that best deal to save you money. And then once we have that, say that we identify a home, we go see it, you got to be ready to put in that offer and move forward. In markets like today and in general in real estate, you can't really sit on a thought to buy a home for an extended period of time. There's just too many buyers out here that are looking in the same areas and looking in the same price range. Um, so you got to be ready to move. I'm not talking about in less than, you know, 2 hours of the home being listed, you saying, I want to buy it, and we're writing a contract. But I'm saying once you see that home, you decide you want it, you got to be ready to move. Okay. Partner with the right team. You have to have the right agent and you have to have the right lender. Those two together are powerful. And the lender is really the secret sauce in in the transaction. And I say that because a lot of times when you are buying a home and you put a purchase um, agreement and we send that to the listing agent for the seller to review, that listing agent, if they're a good one, now they don't all do this, but if they're a good one, they're going to call the lender and they're going to say, hey, we received an offer for such and such buyer that you have written a pre-approval letter for. How strong is that pre-approval? How long do you think it will take them or for you to fully underwrite them and get them fully approved, right? Is there anything we need to be concerned about with their ability to be approved? So that lender is going to talk you up. They are going to make sure that you are in the best position to move forward and relay that to the listing agent. They're going to work with your agent directly to identify what parts of assistance financially we need to be asking the seller to pay so that you are in the best position to move forward. The last thing we want to do is write an offer just blindly and hoping and praying that they accept it, but really don't have a strategy. So your agent and your lender work so closely together to make sure that you are successful. That's why agents have recommended lenders that they use. I know how they work. I've worked with them. I know that they can get the deal done. I know that they have strong communication. I know that they have a great reputation, right? If you come and I just, Google lender in Austin and I just pick one, I have no idea about that lender. So when you're working with an agent, it's really ideal and for you to at least talk to their recommended lender. Now, you as a buyer can use whoever you'd like as a lender, but I at least say talk to that lender and see if you think you would be a good fit to move forward because your agent and your lender equals leverage for you. All right. So clarity on your numbers, clarity in your search. That's the goal. And then the four numbers that every buyer must know. Watching time so I can be respectful of your time. Your max approval amount, that means when you submit your loan application, the lender's going to come back and say, congrats, you're pre-approved for $500,000. That doesn't mean you have to buy or you should buy a home that's $500,000. And the reason for that is there's things that are going to come up in that transaction and you need some wiggle room. Maybe that appraisal, remember we talked about the value of the home coming in at, a little bit lower or higher, whatever that is. So we need some wiggle room in that amount. You also want to be sure that you're comfortable with the monthly payment, not just the price of the home. Because $500,000 doesn't mean anything until you attach an interest rate, taxes, insurance, HOA, all those things. And then you're like, oh, that probably monthly is way more than I intended or anticipated on paying. So maybe we need to look at homes that are 380 because it matches what you're comfortable with monthly. That's okay, right? I would never recommend buying a home at the max approval that the lender says you're approved for. That's just a pro tip there. Your your cash available, down payment and closing costs. Do you have the monies that you need? A good lender is going to give you a itemized worksheet when you submit a loan application. And it's going to break down all the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. It's going to break down closing costs. It's going to break down payment, all those things. So you see that and you really know what all of those numbers mean. And then you'll have a conversation about if that is something that is feasible or doable, and do you have the cash available in order to do so? You can get that cash from several different ways. It can be a gift to you from family. It has to be done the right way, so make sure you're communicating with your lender. It could be from 401k. It could be from a second job. It can be from many different things, but the documentation has to be correct in order for you to fully be approved to your lender. So that's just a conversation, right? Your timeline, when you're realistically needing to move. The timeline matters because when you get to writing a purchase agreement, we're going to have to select a closing date. How soon we need to start that search. It's taking anywhere from 3 to 4 months for buyers to find homes, get their offer in, get approved, get all the way through closing. So I recommend kind of getting that initial start at least 6 months prior to when you think you are needing to move, or 6 months prior to your lease ending where you currently live. 1 month, 2 months, that's really a that's a tough one. Then at that point, it almost feels like you're just rushing or picking something because you're like, oh my gosh, I have to move, right? You're not making the best decision for you. So timeline is important, which we establish in your consultation. based on your situation. Repairs and upgrades, are repairs or upgrades after inspection. Are there additional costs? Maybe the seller wouldn't cover something that you wanted in that home. Do you have the funds to still buy the home and to do those repairs or upgrades? That's a number you need to know, right? So there's a lot of things that go into the decision to move forward with a home. And that's why you really need to have a clear understanding of not only your numbers, your position, your leverage, and what your options are. Why those four numbers matter? Just what I said, right? Defines the homes that you are realistically looking for, and it filters out all the noise. Zillow is noise, noise, noise. Zillow is not even that accurate, where most of those homes that are listed or that you're seeing as available have already been sold, taken off the market, withdrawn for whatever reason. Zillow does not update real time. Your realtor has access to the MLS, which is a multiple listing service, where we set up a personalized search for you with true active homes. It gives you updates real time. Did they just reduce the price by $25,000? It puts it right at the top of your search. So you're like, oh, that was a home I was eyeing, right? And they just decreased it by $25,000. I'd like to go see it, right? So it really kind of filters out the noise for you. Prevents overstretching just because the lender or the bank says yes. That's where I was talking about that max approval amount. You don't have to buy at that number. That just tells you you can't go over, right? You can buy at 4,999,999, but you can't buy at 501, right? So that just gives you a guide. That doesn't mean that's what you have to buy. Shows you exactly where you have leverage, like I said, cash versus approval versus timing. And then, of course, gives you the confidence so that when the right home comes, you feel confident in making that decision to move forward. Keep this in mind. If you don't like your numbers when you talk to the lender, you can always improve them. I recommend reaching out to a lender as early as possible. If my lease ended in October of 2026, I'm probably going to reach out to a lender, do a pre-approval, see what my numbers look like. Do I need to work on my credit? Do I need to pay down some debt? Do I need to find someone who can give me $15,000? No, I'm just kidding. Do I need to look at some down payment assistance programs, right? You can always change those numbers. But if you do that at crunch time, you reach out to a lender 2 months before you need to move, there's no time to work on that. So then it's just going to be a straight denial, and then you feel very discouraged. But if you do this early in the process, even a year, right? If you know you just re-signed your lease, but you want to buy by the end of that lease, start with the lender now. Get an idea of where you are. The lender will tell you, we need your credit score to go up by 15 points, and then you can be approved, or we were able to approve you. We need you to pay off $8,000, and then we can approve you, right? So they're going to give you specific guides and help you restructure what those numbers actually look like because they can be fixed, right? But it's just when you do it and the preparation so that you're not discouraged in the process. I had to do it. Okay. When I went to go apply for a mortgage, it wasn't approved right away. We had to pay down some debt in order to boost our scores. I will caution you against just starting to pay off debt. I learned this the hard way. Once you start paying off debt, it changes your credit ratios. You know, credit is based off of the mix of different kinds of credit you have, your payment history, the average or the length of your oldest credit account or report. That's not the right word. The length of your, you know what I'm saying. There's so many things that make up your credit score. If you just start paying down all your debt, now you have nothing to show that drops that average of your length of credit, and that can discourage or discount you from being able to be approved. So don't just start paying off stuff. There's really a method to the madness, I like to say, when it comes to credit and mortgage approvals. they will tell you exactly what to do. They will tell you this account needs to be paid off. This account needs to be paid off. This account needs to be paid down to this amount, so that it can maximize your credit score. So, personal experience, I started paying off stuff, and then the lender was like, "Well, that didn't help." I was like, "What do you mean? That can I have my money back then?" So, make sure that you have that conversation first. Okay. Extra costs that a lot of buyers forget to budget for. Talked a little bit about this already, but this just kind of puts it on the screen for you. Closing costs, you can estimate about 2 to 3% of the purchase price of the home is going to go towards closing cost. Now, your down payment can be anywhere from 0 to 20%, and I'll talk about that here in a second. But don't forget about closing costs. People just think down payment and they forget closing cost. Inspections and appraisal fees, like I said, depends on the property because it goes by size. And depending on how many inspections you need. If you have a pool, if you have you want termite inspection, you want a separate roof inspection, you want a foundation inspection, all those are going to cost. So it really depends on the property. Taxes and insurance. When you go to closing, the title company will set up what we call an escrow account. And that escrow account is kind of a housing account. It holds your taxes and insurance to be paid for that next year. So every time you make a payment, it pulls the taxes and insurance, puts it in an escrow account. You don't ever see it. They just take your monthly payment. The escrow account is holding that. So at the end of the year, when you get your tax bill, that escrow account automatically pays your taxes. Now, sometimes it's a little short, sometimes it's more. So you can either owe a little bit or you get a check back, right? I always recommend if you get a check back, just put it back in the escrow account because you never know when it's going to be short again. At least 3 months of that, they'll calculate at closing, and they're going to go ahead and hold that when you first purchase the home so that you kind of get a jump start in your taxes and insurance. Moving expenses, setup expenses for utilities, that's obviously going to vary, but definitely something to keep in mind. And a lot of times, those fees that people don't think about are a lot more when they start calculating it. And they're like, oh, I was forgetting that it costs $200 to transfer my electricity, right? Why? I don't know. But those are fees to think about. Wrapping up here, 4 buyer mistakes that cost people the most right now is waiting for the perfect interest rate. It's not going to happen. Interest rates fluctuate within a day. That same day, the interest rate can do this. Okay. Which is why it's hard to say, well, what are interest rates going to look like next month? I don't know. What are interest rates going to look like next year? There's all kinds of predictions out there, but to be honest, nobody really knows until it happens. So, what is the rate right now? What can we do about the rate right now? And are you able to buy right now? Think right now, right? The another mistake you have, people have, or buyers have, is thinking that you need 20% down. I mentioned that down payments can be zero if you're using a VA loan, if you're a veteran, or a spouse of a veteran. You can use a VA loan, which is 0% down. A USDA loan, like out in Jarrell, those agricultural areas, that's zero down. There's not as many USDA eligible locations anymore because everything is kind of building out because Austin's already so congested. We're already kind of expanding out in the east and west and so forth. So depending on where that area is, it may qualify. Um, FHA is as low as 3.5% of the purchase price. Conventional, you can go as low as 3%. So not everything is 20%. There's so many different things, and there's down payment assistance that can help you with that. Shopping before you know your numbers. I've talked about that already. The Zillow nightmare, not really a nightmare, but it just doesn't help you to be realistic in what your goals are. If you really want to be realistic, you need to be talking to a real estate agent that can really give you market insight, give you the true properties that are available and what suits your needs and situation. Sitting on the sidelines while prices climb because prices are not depreciating. Home prices, as we talked about, are going to continue to appreciate. They've only depreciated, I think, twice in the last gazillion years. Um, so you can expect that home prices are going to appreciate. So just sitting and waiting, it's just adding cost. It's adding money to the price of the home. The 20% down myth, again, I got a little ahead of myself there. 20% is not required. Now, if you want to remove some of your tax that you're going to be paying in your payment, you put 20% down on a conventional loan. That's an extra like $200 that it can save you. But that's a whole different conversation that only applies to a certain type of loan. So there's first time buyer options, there's grants. I had a client that actually received a down payment assistance grant that she did not have to pay back. And it actually resulted in her getting a check for $3,100 when she closed. Did y'all hear me? She received a check for $3,100 when she closed. Okay. So there are so many different programs out there and seller concessions, builder concessions that will help you with those costs. Okay. I've kind of talked about all of these already, but I really want to stress that being here means that you're already close to being ready. If now again is the right time and it fits in your life and your goals and you want to be a homeowner, you are making those steps and strides to be a homeowner, you're in the right place. You're starting off in the right place and having a conversation one-on-one about your specific situation, we can get you even steps closer to that. So hopefully you are ready to take those next steps. Why this matters or why this actually favors prepared buyers, this market favors prepared buyers because homes aren't selling overnight. Homes are actually, I have a graphic here in a second, that are sitting for 50 plus days. Again, that number depends on the location. Um, there are not as many buyers in the market right now, which is why we call it a normal market. It's kind of even, right? Buyers and sellers, nobody really has an upper hand, except I say buyers do because sellers, if they're trying to sell their home, they want to get their home sold. Okay. Sellers market means we have little bitty amounts of inventory and we have a lot of buyers. Sellers are going to be very picky about what they're accepting versus we have a lot of inventory. Sellers are going to then have to be more willing to do things to get a buyer to buy their home. You can negotiate more, and acting now again puts you ahead. And by acting now, I mean reaching out to me for a consultation, connecting you with my trusted lenders, and getting you in that next step. This is information on my first time home buyer. I put her review here, and then kind of what we did to get her to closing. And like I mentioned, she saved money plus received money back at closing. That is incredible. That's everybody's goal, right? When you buy a home is to actually get a check back that you can put in your back pocket and go, that's our first month's mortgage right there, on top of the extra month that you already get. So that's a win-win, right? So your leverage is stronger than you think, guys. And this really was my goal for today was to, again, show you that stats don't lie. Buyers are actually winning. There are 44.4% of the sales right now that are happening in the Austin real estate market that include seller concessions. That means almost half of every transaction, the seller is paying something, right? It may not be all of the closing costs, but they're paying something to help you get into your home. That doesn't include builders because builders are a whole different beast. Builders can pay, $60,000 in closing costs. That's an astronomical amount, but they have the ability to do that, whereas a home seller does not. They can help you with, 10,000, 8,000, 11,000, but they can't do 60. So this does not include new construction. 1 in 5 homes are selling over asking. What that means is that back in 2020, 2021, 2022, when homes were selling over asking, that was almost all the homes because buyers were putting so much towards trying to win that home. Now, they're not really selling over asking, they're either selling at asking or below. Okay, so that's good for you because that means that again, you're winning, you're getting more discounts, you're getting more concessions, and the market is in your favor. There's been a 31.5% inventory increase. So there are more homes coming on the market. And I will say that this number is what we call cyclical. It really depends on where that home is being put on the market, the location, and what time of year. Because in the spring and the summer, homes are on the market like this. Everybody's ready for the summer. They're putting their home on the market. Maybe they're having to move, whatever that looks like. Around the holidays, sometimes the homes being put on the market is a lot less. So that number kind of does this, but on average, we're about 30% increase in homes on the market. 51 days median market time. That means we like to use the median, not the average. The average will factor in, the home that sat for 200 days and then the home that sold for one after 1 day, and it gives you this crazy number, right? Median is more of the actual true number. So homes, again, depending on the location, they're sitting for a lot longer. So 50 days, that's a good almost 2 months that homes are sitting on the market before they're actually selling. And then 2 and 3 plus, I like to add the plus because almost all the builders, I don't know of very many builders that aren't doing any incentives right now. Now, some have better incentives than others, but almost every single builder is doing some sort of incentive, either interest rate and closing costs, or interest rate, closing costs, and appliances, right? They're all doing something. So there's lots of perks to buy a new construction home right now. Here's an example of one that I'm actually going to be a part of here November 1st in Jarrell, Texas. Home prices are so much more affordable, right? The more I drive to Jarrell, I'm like, ooh, these homes are, no, I'm just kidding. But their current incentives right now that in the Castle Rock, or that Castle Rock, which is the builder in the Hunters Glen community, is doing, is they're including blinds, washer, dryer, refrigerator, putting sod, which is grass, in the front and the back. Believe it or not, y'all, a lot of home builders only put grass in the front and then you move in and it's dirt in the back. Same with sprinklers. Sometimes they'll put an automated sprinkler system in the front, but not in the back. So the fact that it's full front and back, that's a plus. They're doing up to 25% price reduction on the home that is a move-in ready home. They're doing $10,000 towards closing costs, 3.99% interest rate. 3.99% interest rate on select homes. Select means homes, again, that are move-in ready. And then for this specific event, anyone that writes a contract that day, they are doing bonuses. So, and realtors, us realtors, there's 8 of us that are going to be hosting open houses in those homes. We personally are giving bonuses for those buyers. So look at those incentives right there and tell me now is not a good time to buy, right? If you want to be a part of that or come to that event, let me know and I'll be sure to get you the information. So to wrap it up here, if I were buying right now, I would be doing the following. Okay. Finding out my budget, what my monthly comfort zone is, writing down, maybe what you pay now, where you have some wiggle room, what's your max that you can pay a month, right? Get that number in your head. Talk to lenders and actually apply with lenders, talking about that number that you just identified and seeing where your buying power is, right? Compare their incentives. One builder or one lender, excuse me, may be able to offer you one loan program and another may be able to offer you another. Believe it or not, they have access to different programs. So you don't have to just talk to one lender. Deciding your must-haves and your nice-to-haves, right? When you're buying a home, there are some things that can be changed, simple cosmetic things you can change versus the layout of the home. Do you have to have blank? Would it be nice to have that? But, it's not that necessary. So identify what those are. And then the things in bold are things that you would be doing with your realtor or real estate agent. understanding what sellers are accepting right now. We have access to see what concessions were given for every single sale. So I can see in that neighborhood, most sellers are given about $10,000 in closing cost. Ding ding, that's a negotiating tool, right? Researching loan programs. Again, your agent and your lender can help provide that information for you, but you can do so as well. Digging into neighborhoods, comps, and trends. So again, what's going on in that specific neighborhood or area that you're interested in? Looking at new listings, I look at the MLS every single day and I'm identifying what's coming on the market, what those homes look like. Again, how long are homes sitting on the market in those areas, all of those things, so that I can share them with you as soon as I see them. Running numbers on closing costs and concessions, like I just mentioned, I can see that for every single sale, except for new build. Those are a different beast, but any resale homes, I can see those. Tracking what's sitting versus what's selling and really comparing, like, is it photography? Is it because that neighborhood is next to a railroad track? Is it because this neighborhood is on a golf course? It is, or it sits next to a golf course. So what are those things that's allowing that neighborhood to move homes quicker than others? And then putting all this information into an actual plan. So again, those bolded things are things that we would be working on together, working as in a client relationship, once you make the move and the decision that you want to purchase, and then we make our way towards purchase. Okay. So what if I told you there's an easier way to do all this and we can actually get started today, by booking what I call a buyer strategy session. In this strategy session, we would identify how you work with a realtor, what that relationship looks like. What are the expectations of you and your realtor? Connecting with a lender, having a plan put in place, becoming a client versus a customer. When you're a client, that means that I can assist you with advice, opinions, helping you negotiate, really helping you to make sure that you are protected, your monies are protected, all of those things. When you're a customer, that just means we don't have any sort of written parameters to our relationship, which is required in Texas in writing. So that just means we're having phone conversations, but I can't really give you any insight. And a lot of times people will send me messages. Um, hey, what do you think about this? I don't know. What do you think about it? Right, that would be my answer, or it's a very vague answer because I legally do not have any I'm unable to represent you. And again, we talk about this in the buyer strategy session on what that looks like. So it's not just me being rude, there's a legal roadblock there. Okay. Your must-haves, nice to haves, letting me know that so that when I'm looking for homes for you, I can keep that in mind. And then clarity again on your timeline and next steps. So what you can expect from me is really getting that step-by-step strategy in depth, empowering you to the closing table, making strong connections with lenders and vendor partners, honest guidance on what's realistic. I don't just give you fluff and say, yeah, 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 you can do it, yay, when I know that there's no real ability for you to do so. So I'll be super honest about that. Communication, I'm really big on communication, and then negotiating strategy. So there's a win-win there, for us to work together. And I promised a different approach to get you different results. So as we close here, thank you so much for attending, and hopefully you'll be able to have that strategy session with me, meeting in person, taking that first step, getting clarity on your plan. You can do so by scanning the QR code, if you're currently on your phone right now, and you still need that link. I'm going to send it out in a follow-up email. So I will have the link there that you can click on to schedule your one-on-one session. Now, again, just because we have a one-on-one consultation doesn't mean I expect that you're going to go by tomorrow. It really is setting the tone and identifying all those steps and putting that strategic plan in place that we've talked about, over the last hour. And that's super critical to make sure that you are in the best position possible. Okay. And now for your bonus gift for staying till the end. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hopefully you got something out of this and it's encouraging you to take that next step. If you close with me, I am offering a voucher complimentary, which is a $660 value. That is the cost for 1 full year of a home warranty policy. We didn't talk about that much today, but in your consultation, we kind of talk in your negotiations. When you purchase a home, you want a home warranty. And that costs about $660. So I am footing that for the first year for you in my appreciation and thank you for joining me today and staying to the end and hearing what I have to say and hopefully again motivating you to make that first step. So everyone will be emailed that as well. And I will keep track of who attended and who stayed till the end so to make sure that you get your voucher. Okay. Any questions? Nope, that's okay. You can always email me. My contact information is right here for you. There's my phone number, my email, my website. So again, you'll get a follow-up email from me with that information, but you can always send me your questions there, along with the link that I'll have in there to schedule your buyer strategy session. So again, thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening and looking forward to working with you all in the future.